House to Home, presented by Remax Diamond Realty.
Hello, hello, hello. When Liz and Gina and I get all dressed up, I mean, they get dressed up because they're way more fashionable than I am. But when we get dressed up and jump on Zoom, that means we are talking to you about amazing things and information you need to know about the wonderful real estate industry. So, hop a day, ladies.
Hop a day.
All right. I am really interested in today's topic keyword, and the three of us are not divided. We're all on the same page, and I'm trying to I'm trying to phrase that in a way that would make it sense, because we are talking today, Gina, about undivided interest. Now, the three of us have never quarreled on anything. Like, I'm sure if the three of us shared property, we would come to a consensus decision to split it equally and be amicable between the three of us. But that's not always the case, and Guam law actually dictates the way a piece of property can be split up, right?
Yeah. And if you're particularly talking about undivided interest, what does that mean? And the way you just explained it, it sounded really great. We're all together as one. We own the property. It's undivided interest. Share and share alike.
We're all sitting in a circle, holding hands, singing "Kumbaya." You know, everything's cool. It doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah, you got that right. I mean, it sounds wonderful. And we do notice that a lot of like when my parents passed, when my mom passed, because she outlived my dad. So when she passed, she could not decide who to give her house to. She talked about who she wanted to give it to. And she made it very clear that it wasn't ever, she never, ever thought of me getting the house. But my brothers and sisters and maybe some of the grands, you know, she had thought of giving it to them, but it became such a difficult decision. She never made the decision. So when she passed, technically, if we all go to probate, we will get the property in undivided interest. And there's 7. Well, my brother passed, so now there's 6 of us. And so you think that that was a good thing to own it in undivided interest. What that means is that if it goes to all 6 of us, we can take that house and cut it up into 6 slices, and we each get a slice. Well, you know, when it comes to property, in particular, when it comes to a home, what can you do with a slice of that home? Not very much, because you all have to agree to it. And look, my mom and dad couldn't agree about who to give the house to. And now you throw in 6 siblings, and we love each other. But the standard is we're not going to agree on what to do with that home. And what I like to point out to people is, if you own it in undivided interest, what are you really going to do? Because, you all 6 could move in there. Is that physically possible? Probably not. Do you want to do that? Probably not.
Well, I'm from Denver, so I see that all the time.
Yeah, but, not everybody can do that or wants to do that. What about, I have siblings in the States. How are they going to benefit from me moving into that house? So in undivided interest, it sounds like it's a really great arrangement, but the reality is it may not be such a good arrangement for families, right? It may not be the best way to make that the best way to own the property.
Now, Liz, I know some people that I've talked to since, and this isn't the first time that we're tackling this topic right here. We've talked about it at least half a dozen times. Right? Always interesting. But when we talk about undivided interest, many people say, okay, that sounds good in principle, but how about if there are myself and 3 of my siblings? When property is passed down to us, it's bequeathed, it's inherited, whatever. If you were to divide that into 4 equal parts, then it might become, okay, well, I want quadrant 1 because it's got the sun exposure, or this used to be my room when I was a kid, or, there's a lemon tree on that side. And now does it get kind of like silly, because now who owns what quadrant, right?
Well, see, when you have undivided interest, for example, if you're only owning 929 square meters or 1,000 square meters, that's a quarter. If there's 7 of you, what can you do with that piece? You really cannot subdivide that. So it's just dependent on the size of the property and what could be done with it. But when you have undivided interest, you're all linked together. So let's say you want to sell it, but the rest of us don't. Guess what? You're stuck. Or you're going to have to get a consensus from the group to sell the property so that at least all 7 of you can share in the sales proceeds of that single property that you cannot subdivide. So it gets complicated. where there are people who want to sell and then there are people who don't. And we've had situations where families have gone to court because they could not do anything, and they had the court had to force the actual sale of the property in order to divide it among the heirs. We've had situations where people come in, oh, we just want to sell our interest. It's not a simple matter of just selling your interest. Imagine getting into bed with 10 people. Can you imagine? And it's not an easy sight to see, because it just gets too complicated, and then you get caught up in litigation. Today, I had someone come in to say, I own 50%. My company owns 50%, and we want to sell. My other partner, who owns the remaining 50%, is not communicative. They don't answer our calls. They haven't responded to the possibilities of buying our share or us purchasing their share. So Gina and I come across all kinds of stories when it comes to undivided interest.
And I thought I had some funny stories to share. I can imagine if you guys get a couple drinks in you and, hang out at the bar and start sharing some horror stories.
That's right.
Well, the stories aren't funny though, Jace.
I'm sure they're not. I'm sure they're quite emotional.
Yeah, they're tragic.
But Gina, I do have a question now that we know, and we've brought up this topic again of undivided interest. Does this apply regardless of the type of zoning a piece of property may have, whether it's, residential, commercial, or agricultural?
Correct. It does. We're talking about title ownership. When we're talking about your undivided interest, we're talking about how do you hold title to that property. And it has nothing to do with use. It has nothing to do with zoning.
It gets complicated.
I'm sorry. I just lost everything on my screen.
Yeah, we still got you.
We can still you. We can still see.
Okay. All right. I thought I went blank on you guys. I apologize. But Jace, it has nothing to do with any of that. This is about your ownership. How are you holding title to the property? The rest of those issues are easier to maneuver around. They're easier to find solutions for if an issue comes up. But when you own an undivided interest, it's almost as if no matter who the individuals are, you're married to each other and you have joint ownership of that title. And the issues come up when one person wants to sell or do something with the property, but the other individual doesn't agree. Mm-hmm. What actually, and like with Liz's situation where the owner says, well, we just want to sell our interest. It's difficult to sell a part interest in property where you have to say, well, the owner can only sell half of it, half of the interest. So you're not even talking about half the land. And that's what, that's why we're calling it undivided interest. You have interest and there's no clear division as to which half of the house do you have, or do you have the front part of the lot or the back part? No, it's undivided. So you each own an interest in the title, but it's not really clear cut what part of the house you have. And so if you have a party who doesn't agree with you, what could you really do? And can you really sell your interest? We've seen it happen. But what ultimately ends up occurring is the people that buy these undivided interests, they buy it maybe 5 cents to the dollar. Really, they'll say, listen, I'll buy it dirt cheap, because I've got a lot of legal work to do to get this property to be worth anything.
I was just about to ask that. I was going to say, what does it do to a property's valuation if the entire property, or if it is undivided interest, and is it basically free market at that point? It sounds like that's what you're saying.
But when someone is buying an undivided interest, of course, I was just telling the client this morning that there's got to be some disclosure. If you're going to sell your 50%, you have to disclose that the other 50% owner is uncooperative. So going into a sale like that, they have to offer a big discount in order to unload the property, because there are legal ramifications trying to resolve that particular issue. Mm-hmm. So that's why Gina and I, when we're working with clients, if we have a parent that wants to deed a property to the family, or has not done a trust or worked on their legal documents, we always ask, what is your intent? Did you want all your kids to own the property, or did you want one particular child to own the property? And get your paperwork in order before anything happens. Because if there's discord in the family, in the end, there's a battle.
This is as critical as car ownership insurance, right? I mean, it's not mandated like that. You don't have to do this, but I mean, this is basically like it literally is in legal terms an expression of intent when what you want to do with it, and you can possibly avoid like a heck of a lot of headache going forward.
But even that, Jace, we've spoken to family members where, like, if you spoke to my siblings, one sibling is going to say, "But mom told me this," and I'm going to say, "Wait a minute, mom told me that." And so we find this, when people come in and sometimes we have the opportunity of talking to different members of the family, we do see that what mom or dad told this person and that person isn't connecting.
Then if little Tommy says, "Mom told me this," and then little Sally says, "Well, mom told me this," cousin John, who's an attorney, would say, "Okay, well, get it in writing because I want to see that."
Yeah,
that's right. That's
Hence
right.
The need to actually get that all on paper and get it contractually.
It's always good to have all your affairs in order, especially when we always ask, "What's the intent? What did you prefer to do?" And be prepared to get all your documents in order. Otherwise, it's a war cry.
And this is just a normal part of property ownership, everyone. We tell you like this all the time. These are decisions that have to be made. It's a series of decisions over a very long period of time. And this will actually, maybe not, on the market, but this is a way that you will actually get the most value out of your property because you're not imposing, potential costs on your descendants 20, 30 years from now.
The thing I see, Jason, sometimes it goes 3 generations. And if it continues to the 4th generation, you're dealing with maybe 100 relatives. And then to even resolve that problem, there's more than 10 interests. You're looking at 100 interests in the property. And then it just continues to get further and further and deeper into the quagmire that you won't be able to resolve it.
And with me and all my first cousins, I'm the second oldest of 50. I can't even begin to, we all get along. We all love each other, but I can't even begin to imagine if Nana and Tata deeded us like property and all 50 of us didn't get along. That's crazy. That's already making like the hairs on the back of my neck stand.
Yep.
Gina, can you please take us home with giving us like share some anecdote about undivided interest that doesn't stress me out so much. I'm at blood pressure now.
Well, think of it this way. Love conquers all, but not when it comes to business. So you have to make decisions. They're hard decisions, but you know what? In the long run, it makes things so much easier when you can make a decision, put it in writing, and just leave it. That's all we can really hope for, is that somebody will make a decision, whether it's myself or my properties or Liz. I know Liz has done hers. She already has a trust. And Jace, believe it or not, sometimes we have families who come in here and all we really tell them is, listen, this is what we see that is successful. Do a trust or prepare your deed and sign it now. If you cannot prepare the deed,
okay. Here's a hypothetical though.
We should bring in a trust attorney for the next show to talk about it. But even if you have a trust, I just discovered, I'm sure Gina is, that we have some friends who have some trust. And when one passes, there were items in the trust or a procedure that was not known. So you have to keep updating your trust and be knowledgeable, because if one goes before the other, what happens?
How about if you only have, what about, here's a hypothetical for you ladies before we wrap up. How about in a situation where a parent who owns a piece of property only has one child, they only have one descendant, and they're like, oh, what's the point? Because I only have one kid. It's obviously going to get passed to that person.
If you don't make that decision, that one child has to go to court and pay all the fees and wait that period of time. I had a probate that was exactly the situation. They only had one person in the family. She only had one. It was an actual niece,
because nothing was on paper, nothing was expressed, intent was not documented.
Yeah, but even if you just have the one, it makes it even easier. So do it, get it over with. get it prepared now. Don't wait. You never
Okay.
know when that's coming.
So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages watching there, make sure to get your property. Make sure to set up a trust. I mean, I know it seems a little bit, it's a little bit of work, but it is going to really pay dividends as you go forward. Liz, Gina, and I are going to go apply to law school like right after this, and we're going to go get our law degrees.
No, we have too many good lawyers that we know. No need.
There you go. Yeah, but yeah, Liz, that was a really good idea. Maybe we can get our friend Mickey Flynn to come back in and talk about trust because he's the best.
Yes.
All right.
We'll bring him back.
All right, ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jace.
House to Home, presented by RE/MAX Diamond Realty.